Russia has carried out large-scale aerial attacks on cities across Ukraine overnight. At least 2 people were killed after a drone hit a residential building in the capital, Kyiv. 4 others died in strikes on the surrounding region. Ukraine said the attacks targeted oil and gas infrastructure and caused power cuts across the country. The southeastern region of Zaporizhzhia was also hit. The new onslaught came after a summit between US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin was called off. Trump said conditions were not yet in place for such high-level talks after Moscow's refusal to accept both a ceasefire and the freezing of the current front line in the east.
I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals. They're agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle, the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody takes some time off because you got 2 countries that are killing each other. You got 2 countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens.
Now, for more on this, we can now bring in DW's Rebecca Ritters in Kyiv. Rebecca, what more can you tell us about these overnight attacks across Ukraine?
Well, it was another loud, long and largely sleepless night for people in the capital here last night, Gerhard. Those first explosions being heard little after 1 a.m. local time and really carrying on through the night. Those air defence working very hard to try to repel some of the 405 drones and 28 missiles that were launched at the country overnight. As you mentioned in that lead in there, it was a widespread attack, Kyiv not being the only target. Other regions like Zaporizhzhia, Odessa also being hit, but Kyiv certainly one of the biggest, with 2 killed in the city and 4 in the outskirts in the wider region, as you mentioned there. Now, energy infrastructure was the biggest target, but unfortunately, of course, always residential areas also hit. Now, President Zelenskyy, is using these attacks to say, well, this is an indication. I mean, if any more proof was needed, that President Putin simply isn't interested in coming to the negotiating table.
Talking about that, the strikes come just a day after Putin's planned meeting with Trump in Budapest was called off. What's the response been in Ukraine to those talks being shelved?
Well, let's just say that I don't think anyone here is particularly shocked by that news, Gerhard. This is certainly something the Ukrainians have been saying for a long time, that Putin is simply buying for time. President Zelenskyy putting that even in stronger words on X, saying that Russia will do anything to weasel out of diplomacy. And this is yet more proof, as they say. President Zelenskyy is saying that peace through power and strength is really the only thing that is going to turn this war around. That when the tomahawks were on the table, when these longer range weapons were being discussed, then President Putin was more interested in coming to negotiate. Now that those have been taken off the table, we see that President Putin suddenly isn't ready to negotiate, and in fact is sending more barrages of drones and missiles towards his country. So that is really the message coming from Ukraine, coming from President Zelenskyy as he tours Europe, trying to garner even more support from European allies, that strength is the only thing that President Putin is going to listen to.
Now, Zelenskyy is meeting with Ukrainian allies this week. What will he be pushing for there?
Well, he's doing a tour at the moment. He's in Norway. He's just been granted a $150 billion gas package from Norway to try to keep heating running through the winter months here in Ukraine, with this energy infrastructure, of course, being targeted by Russia. That's one thing. He'll be heading over to Sweden. There, it's expected that we hear some sort of weapons export package, so it's not yet clear of the details. And, of course, this is all in the lead up to this big coalition of the willing meeting expected in London on Friday, where Europeans and Ukrainians will be there putting together a proposal for peace. President Zelenskyy will be, as I just was saying, really trying to pressure or get support for putting pressure on Russia from the Europeans and trying to continue to convince the Americans that that is what needed, trying to get President Trump to continue to, focus on putting pressure on Putin rather than trying these sort of diplomatic ends, which, as we've just seen, seem to get nowhere.
DW correspondent Rebecca Ritt is there reporting from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Rebecca.